Hey guys, and welcome to the weekly docket. Let's check in on Richard Allen in Indiana. Last week we looked at his attorney's emergency motion to have him transferred and the drama they talked about. He has to sleep on the floor, prisoner of war. He's going crazy and all of the things they said there, not all of which I bought. The judge did respond to that with this order saying the Department of Correction is authorized to move the defendant to accommodate his medical and physical needs pursuant to medical directives. So he can be moved. Has he been moved? I don't know. Where will he be moved? I don't know that it'll be where he wanted to go. But he is allowed to move. The judge made no comment, at least on the order, about all the allegations that the defense brought up about how badly he had it. Now, remember how he got to where he was, though, and because some people said, well, hey, he was in that kind of confinement because his own defense requested it. And that's not true. He didn't even have a defense lawyer at the time that order was made. It was made on November 3rd, 2022. And that was in response to a request by the sheriff, of Carroll County, who filed a request saying that he needed to move the guy for his safekeeping, that they were trying to keep Richard Allen safe. The court found that the defendant is an inmate awaiting trial and that he is in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death, or that he represents a substantial threat to the safety of others, and that the finding is not predicated on any acts or alleged acts of the defendant since arrest, but rather a toxic and harmful insistence on public information about defendant in this case. The judge went on in that order, which was kind of a famous order, busting on people who wanted to know about the case and some of the weird things that they have to say, and allowed the sheriff to move spirit this guy away for his own safety. Now, given the fact that it seems like a significant amount of people who follow cases don't believe in due process, I get a little bit of where the judge is coming from. But, like I said before, I didn't buy everything the defense said on this about how terrible it was. The new judge seemed to float the canoe right down the middle of the river and say, look, you can move him somewhere else. That's fine. In Colorado, Leticia Stauch is facing trial for the murder of her young stepson. While the state is busy seeing just how much evidence you can actually fit into one case to show guilt because she clearly did it, she's busy making the case against herself worse by making obscene gestures at people in the courtroom, including witnesses. The judge was advised of this and let her know that, hey, look, I got a lot of options here, and I don't have to sit here and let you do this. I can put you in a holding cell. You can just chill out there. Or maybe I'll install a bolt under the table and I'll just handcuff your hands to it. The jury won't see that, but you won't be able to use your hands for anything. So how about just stop doing it, and then we don't have to worry about it. So far, so good on that. Again, as the state cruises to what should be a very clear guilty verdict in this horrible case. In Florida, chalk one up for a convicted murderer. In this case, the guy broke into his landlord's house, terrorized the landlord, his wife, and his son, killed the landlord, and then set the place on fire with the wife and son still alive in it. A great person who didn't want to accept the consequences of his actions has various post-conviction proceedings going on, and they were going to be heard by Judge Elizabeth Scherer. And you might remember her from the Nicholas Cruz school shooter case. He asked that she be disqualified. The motion to disqualify says you got to set forth specific and material facts upon which the judge's impartiality might reasonably be questioned, and the party reasonably fears that he or she will not receive a fair trial or hearing. Okay, so the reasonably fears, it can't just be your own superstition or whatever. You got to show something that says, hey, a reasonable person would say, this judge may not be impartial in my case. So if you remember, she was caught on video. I shouldn't say caught. She was shown on video hugging the prosecution team after the case was over, the Nicholas Cruz case. She was also hugging the victims and things. And I think it was a hard case for everybody. There was a lot of contention in it. And she was demonstrating, I think, some humanity in that. But you also got to keep in mind your role there, right? And would that affect the position of people coming in front of her in the future? Let's see what this austere legal scholar said about this back around the time it happened.
after the proceedings were over to these families. I can't argue with that. I think it's a very decent thing for her to do. Hugging the prosecution team, though, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that if they initiate it. You shouldn't do that if you initiate it, and they should have stopped that as well, because you just shouldn't do that. You can express appreciation to the judge and things like that, but actually hugging each other after a case is over, I think that looks bad maybe for the next people that come up in front of her and stuff like that. I mean, the judge should look impartial.
So we have that weirdo internet nut saying that maybe the judge shouldn't have done that could cause issues with people coming in front of her in the future. What did the Florida Supreme Court say last week? They said that her actions would create in a reasonably prudent person a well-founded fear of not receiving a fair and impartial proceeding. Crucial facts that together were sufficient to create this well-founded fear were the hugging of the assistant state's attorney by the judge in the courtroom while still wearing a robe at the conclusion of the Cruz murder case, and then the personal exchange between her and that same attorney 2 days later during this convicted murderer's post-conviction proceedings, where she asked the attorney, hey, how are you doing? And I think they're referring back to the Cruz case because it was a tough one. So the hug came back to haunt her, at least in the standpoint of she's not going to preside over that case and has been disqualified from it. The Supreme Court removing her. So it just goes to show, the judges make mistakes sometimes too. Here, I think it was no ill intent, but it was just humanity. But you got to remember the rules. That's why you have appellate courts to bring that back to bear. And the defendant, even a convicted scumbag like this person, is entitled to have a judge who appears impartial. In Wisconsin, Taylor Schabusiness had her motion to change venue heard this week, and the judge denied it and said the case is going to stay where it is. So a loss for her current attorney, who also failed to get the judge to disqualify himself. That's 2 losses. I don't know if Taylor has a 3-strike rule for attacking attorneys, but if I were her new lawyer, I might scoot my chair over to the right a little bit whenever she's in the courtroom with me and give myself a little space. If you've made it this far, I'll give you a little bonus content, which is, of course, we reviewed the Daryl Brooks restitution hearing. We kind of know what his sentence is. However, there were some still, to me, slightly confusing things about it. So I spoke with the clerk of court in Waukesha, and they are sending me the actual amended final judgment of conviction on Daryl Brooks, which should specify everything in detail. And as soon as that arrives, I'm going to post it up and go over it. We'll have the actual written document. I haven't seen that anywhere else. So hopefully that arrives soon. That's it for this week. Thanks. Bye.